Well, it is Rivalry Week. The big game is tomorrow, and so I wanted to have on one of the most outspoken Cougar fans. You're my kind of Cougar fan because I'm kind of like you. I'm a little bit outspoken. I'm willing to say what I believe. The tricky part with BYU and Utah is you got the religious aspect, right? You've got the school is tied to a religion, so people take it so much more personal and serious in that regard. But then you also have the rival where a lot of them belong to the same religion. It's just a very interesting aspect of a football game. And so I want to have you on. You're very outspoken, but you have a very cool story, an amazing story of how you ended up at BYU, why you're such a passionate BYU fan. And so I kind of wanted to give people an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better, Derik. And so welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, this is my favorite week of the year. I said it earlier on social media. This is like my birthday and Christmas and Thanksgiving all wrapped into one beautiful week and one beautiful game. So yeah, I really appreciate you having me.
Well, you got a cool thing going this year for the tailgate, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing for the game.
Yeah, you know, I love the rivalry and how passionate people are on both sides, but I've also really realized that, you know, both sides have a really cool fan base when it comes to charitable work. And I love Kalani's foundation, the More to Life Foundation, and I love some of the stuff that Kyle's doing up there, and guys like Steve Tate with the Hayes Tough Foundation, and thought if I could kind of bring together, with all this excitement that's going on, if I could bring together both fan bases to kind of raise a little bit of money for both sides and split the proceeds. I actually talked to the guys up at the U, and they're going to allow me to set up a dunk tank where Utah fans, while they're tailgating and having a good time, they can come out, donate a little money, throw a football, and try and dunk DS into an ice cold bucket of water. And I think the high for the day is looking like it's going to be about 34 degrees and going to be snowing probably, so it's going to be a lot of fun for me. I don't think I'll be in a Speedo or anything, but, you know.
Dude, we can get you like a BYU Speedo. I think that would be perfect for the occasion.
Let's do it, man. If you can find one. I don't know if BYU endorses any merchandise like that.
Yeah, I don't know either. We'll have to get a homemade one or something.
You know, I'll rock that. I'm 44, but I don't care. I'll still rock that.
Well, dude, I love it. Tell us a little bit. Let's back it up. I don't think people truly know enough about your story and why you're so passionate about BYU. But let's back up. You grew up in Southern California. Walk us through a little bit, because you were a big-time recruit out of high school. You get recruited by USC and Miami, were the other two schools I believe you went on a trip to.
Yeah.
And those were pretty much the two biggest schools at the time. Well, at least Miami, especially, you know, coming off of the Warren Sapp, Russell, Maryland years, and so they were the university at the time. So how did you end up at BYU instead of going there?
Yeah, I was always super passionate about the University of Miami. They just had more attitude and more swagger than anybody else, and I kind of loved that about them. Watched them win a lot of national championships with Jimmy Johnson, who I ended up playing for at the Miami Dolphins, and then Dennis Erickson. You know, those guys had a lot of rings in the decade before recruiting me, and I really wanted to go and play there just because I liked their attitude. But my parents at the time were both fairly recent converts to the LDS Church, and it was kind of a unique culture down there where I didn't have any LDS friends, and kind of ran with a pretty rough crowd down there, but always had the idea in my head that I wanted to go on a mission. And Dennis Erickson recruited me to come out to Miami, and I asked him about it. I said, Coach, you know, I'd like to come and play here for a year, but then I'd like to take 2 years off to serve a church mission. And I remember him kind of sitting back just saying, well, what's that all about? You know, and I said, yeah, I'm Mormon, and I want to go and I want to serve for 2 years and take that time off. He says, why would you want to do that? You know, we'll put you in the NFL, come down here, you know, come party with us, have a good time, see if you like it for a year, and if you still want to go on that mission after a year, we'll see if we can make that work. And I could really tell that, you know, Mormon kids and going on missions and stuff back in the mid-90s, it wasn't really a thing for other schools.
You were doing that, you were going to BYU.
Yeah. And I thought, well, you know, this guy's not really excited about me going on a mission. I could tell based on my weekend there that they were going to try and get me to party and have fun and look towards the NFL and talk about money and lifestyle and all those sorts of things. And I kind of felt like after a year he would probably try and talk me out of it. And
what was that guy's name? Nevin Shapiro, the guy with the Miami players would take the yachts out. Did you ever meet Nevin Shapiro?
Oh yeah, we went to his penthouse that night. Shapiro arranged for our host that night to be Luke Skywalker, a 2 Live Crew. And he showed up in this extended limousine that had a hot tub in it, a convertible limo, and all 20 of us players piled into this thing, and they had girls in bikinis in this hot tub, and we're 17 and 18-year-old kids, and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, Derik, who can say no to this, right? Sure. And these guys put everybody in the NFL, and I'm thinking, do I want to play in the NFL or do I want to go on a mission? And being from a family of a couple of recent converts, my parents are trying to figure out the whole Mormon thing anyway, and we didn't have a real community, a real strong community of a bunch of LDS kids, so I kind of felt like I was on my own to kind of make this decision. And after taking my trip to Miami, partying with Two Live Crew, partying with Michael Irvin and Russell Maryland and all those guys, and they had our fake IDs already printed up. I was 17 and it said I was 22. Yeah, I wondered why they asked me to send out a passport photo a week before I show up. And I get to my hotel room and there it is on my bed next to the case of beer and a bag of weed. We had this fake ID printed up.
That was literally your welcome.
That was our welcome package, along with a list of phone numbers of our quote-unquote hostesses for the weekend that we could call up, and you look at a picture roster of these young ladies that were in charge of convincing us to become Miami Hurricanes. And there were 20 other kids on the visit, 19 other. There were 20 of us total. And I think I was probably the only kid out of that recruiting class that didn't sign with Miami because they were getting anybody that they wanted. And Dennis Erickson told me, and my father came and took the trip with me. They told him he was going to have to pay his own way. I don't think he did. I think they comped him everything. And he was a brand new bishop in the Mormon church at the time, and the coaches didn't know. Really back in Florida or on the East Coast, Mormonism was just so much smaller.
It was a smaller world in general back then, right? It was just like the BYU was just some of those schools.
And the coaches are like, hey, we'll take your dad out. The players are going to take you out, and we're going to show both of you a good time. And it was Ed Ogeron that was the recruiting coordinator for Dennis Erickson, and he
has a reputation as being to this day one of the best recruiters of all time. I mean, at USC, anywhere else.
Well, he got into a huge bar fight that weekend. Ended up getting arrested.
Was your dad there when he got arrested?
No, my dad had gone back to the hotel because these guys were going out clubbing. These old guys, they were going out to a place that was called the Rolex, and it was crazy. We went down to Coconut Grove, and they probably showed me. I mean, I was in no ways a naive kid, growing up in Southern California with non-Mormon friends, but man, it was a weekend as a 17-year-old that you only saw in the movies, and it was just absolutely insane. And I kind of compared that and contrasted that with my recruiting trip to Provo the next weekend.
Tell us about that. What was the difference?
So Lavelle brings me up. My dad, of course, felt safe sending me up to Provo without
supervision.
And we went snowmobiling. I mean, we just had a blast. Bunch of good guys. Shay Murbrook was on my flight with me coming up from Southern California. We were roommates in the hotel, and we talked, kind of about BYU and how it was so different than the other recruiting trips we went on. And I sat down with Lavelle and had the same discussion and said, hey, I want to go on a church mission. And just had the total opposite response compared to Erickson. And he just said, you're damn right you're going to go on a mission. He says, if you don't want to go, he says, I'm going to make you go because it's going to be good for you. It may not be good for our team, but for you, long term, it'll be the best thing that you ever do. And I guess I was kind of fortunate at the time, 17, my parents both said, look, you got these two schools that are kind of your two dream schools, and we're just going to let you choose. And whichever way you go, we're going to support you 100%.
You probably didn't realize at the time how big of a life decision for the direction of the entire rest of your life that was probably going to be.
And I don't know what it was because, I was pretty immature, 17, but there was something in me that just said, Derik, you need this. You need BYU. And looking back, I had enough problems as it was going to BYU and towing the line and following all the rules. And, we did have a lot more rules than we would have anywhere else, but just so grateful that I chose BYU over the University of Miami. And at the time, I was mature enough, or at least had that inkling in my head to to choose the school that is going to be the best for your long-term future.
Yeah.
And I was kind of a punk because I didn't let my parents know up until the day I committed to Provo, to BYU. But I had decided after that trip that, National Letter of Intent Day, I'm definitely going to go to BYU. And I waited for Lavelle to come down, meet with my parents, and sit on the couch with us and talk about it before I told them, Coach, I'm going to come and play for you. And my mom just let out this huge sigh of relief and almost started crying. And she started smacking me because she's like, I can't believe you didn't tell me where you were going to go to school. And because I told Coach that I had decided when I sat with him in his office and he told me that he was going to have me go on a mission, going to help me. And I made my decision then.
So what was your first year at BYU then? So you end up at BYU. What was your first year there?
Yeah, so 1992, and Coach told me he was going to redshirt me. And then a couple games into the season, we had a couple of linebackers go down to injury. And Coach Edwards came to me and said, we're gonna pull you off your red shirt. And the very first game you're ever going to play in as an 18-year-old kid was at South Bend, back to Notre Dame. And I just remember
John Walsh game.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just remember thinking, oh man, I'm just going straight into it. The biggest scene in college football. And they put me on the kickoff team, and I'll never forget lining up across from Jerome Bettis and some of these other Notre Dame greats.
That team was loaded. That was Rick Meyer and they had a second running back. What was that guy? Yeah, the team was just loaded.
Yeah, just absolutely loaded with talent. And we put up a good fight, came away with a loss. But, just had a great experience. Just being a fresh high school kid, coming out, playing for BYU against Notre Dame. I mean, it was something else.
That's amazing, man. So did you end up going on the mission, or did you end up staying in school? Okay, where'd you go?
Yeah, I ended up going to England, to the Birmingham mission, 93 to 95. So went over and preached in England for a couple of years. Probably lost 20 pounds. I think I came back to BYU weighing like 198 pounds.
6'4", 198.
6'4", 198. Wasn't much of a linebacker. So luckily I still have my redshirt year, so they could put some weight back on me. And so they put me back on the heavy diet and the heavy lifting and got back up to playing weight. So I was able to come in and play my sophomore year, that special 96 year when we went to the Cotton Bowl, Steve Sarkisian and all those guys. So.
Well, the thing I remember most about you as a kid, you go to the games, and we sat up pretty high, but like in the middle of the stadium is where my dad's season tickets were, and you just see 54. It was this like crazy guy on the kickoffs would go down and just blow everybody up. I mean, it was like, it became the best part of the game, was watching you blow guys up on the kickoff. I'm sure you had.
And it's funny how many people
all the time
would come up to me and say that. I think I created this little cult following of the kamikaze cougar, they would call me, and they would make up signs, and all these kids would come out and they would just love watching the kickoff team or punt cover team because that was my favorite thing, just because the impacts were so much harder at such fast speeds. And I knew, because we had such good linebackers that I was playing behind, like Shea Meerbrook and Spencer Reed and Rob Morris and these guys, man, I was never going to get real playing time until later in my career. So I had to do something. I had to make a name for myself, I felt like, on special teams. And I just thought, man, I'm getting a little bit of a following and some notoriety for kind of being this crazy guy out there. And I didn't ever feel like I was like crazy or nuts or anything, because it was always a very calculated thing where I just thought, maybe I'm not as fast or as strong as a lot of these guys, but if there's one thing I can do better than anybody else, and I can just be fearless, reckless, dive over the line, break the wedges, take on the triple teams, start fights, kick guys, whatever. I was going to scrap and do whatever I could to make a name for myself.
Well, I think every team appreciates having a guy like that, right? Where you just know, like, if I'm going into this fight, I know that guy's going to have my back no matter what. And so you were, that 96 year was a special year. That was the year that you guys ended up just losing the one game. I think finished the season
14-1.
14-1, won the Cotton Bowl over Kansas State. What was your favorite memory of that year as a player? It's a special year for Cougar fans.
Yeah, our first game and our last game are the ones that I remember the most. Everything else is kind of a blur, just because of all the concussions. And
how many concussions would you say you got on playing football at BYU?
I think it's probably well into the 20s, 30s. They just didn't document it.
I was going to say, did you have any inkling that this was like a problem, or did you just like, oh, I got a headache? Or
no, just you would black out. You would get knocked out. You'd black out. You'd have headaches, but they just told you at the time. If you're tough enough, and they would say there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. Mm. And an injury is something to your arms or your legs or your shoulders or your neck, and you just can't function. Mm-hmm. But being hurt, you're always in pain. So you get hurt every play almost. Every play hurts. Every game you get hurt. But, I never felt like I was injured. And with them not knowing what they know about the brain now, it was just a matter of shake it off. We used to have these smelling salts that boxers use to come back from being knocked out. And we used to snort them. We'd snort these smelling salts, just every other series.
You legit just to wake up, concuss multiple times a game.
Yeah, multiple times a game. You get your bell rung, you get knocked out. There were a couple times where I didn't know where I was. I didn't know.
You played through that, like just get back in.
Yeah, because your instincts don't ever go anywhere.
Sure.
But, and so much of football, especially playing defense or even special teams, is just instinctive, and you're just reacting. And your body and your mind can still do that, but you just really can't think clearly. So you go in, and as long as there's not too much going on, and you do tend to get your mind back after a few plays or a series, but you just would tough it out, you push through, and there are some things that I'm dealing with in my life now where you can kind of see those effects. And,
sure.
And each year as I get older, everybody always asks me, with concussions, would you still do it all over again? And every year I still say yes, but it gets I think about it a little bit longer each and every year.
Yeah, it's one of those, you hear a lot of NFL players, there's kind of two camps, right? There's like, look, this gave me a life and an opportunity and a time of my life that nothing else ever could have done. And so they have so much gratitude and they're so grateful for their football experience. But then you deal with all the things, like you said, that you have to deal with now that comes from, the CTE and everything else. And so I guess it's that fine mix of, I loved what it provided, but at the same time, at what cost?
Yeah, to this day, like today, for instance, from the time I woke up until, I go to bed tonight, almost everything that I have in my life that fills my day with good things is because of my, playing football at BYU and playing in the NFL and the people that I met. Just doing work on radio now and even TV and trying to write a book and doing charitable work and, doing stuff like I'm doing this weekend with the Rivalry game, being able to generate money for Kalani's foundation. All the people I know and meet, all the clients that I work with love talking sports and football, and it's just like it opened so many doors and gave me so many opportunities that, even with some of the negative stuff that have come into my life, even some really, really hard, serious things like.
Anything you're willing to share?
No, absolutely. My story, my life is an open book. If I hope for other people to really learn from it, especially youth, especially in our culture and our community. Me being open and honest about some of the things that I developed that were negative in my life, like some drug addiction issues. People don't realize that, how many pain pills and muscle relaxers you take over the 4 or 5 years of playing college football. Even at BYU, back in the 90s and early 2000s, just like we didn't know a lot about concussions back then, we really didn't know a lot about some of the addiction issues that players are going to end up walking away from the game with, but still having lingering effects in their life.
Yeah, there's players tell stories of there's literally bowls of painkillers in the locker rooms. You just go in and get what you need.
Yeah, we never saw that, but I remember after playing Alabama my senior year, it was my first game starting as a linebacker. I had 3 stingers, 2 concussions, and a separated shoulder, and trying to get onto the plane and just almost being to the point where you're just in tears because the pain is so bad. And what do the doctors do as you're getting on the plane? They're trying to help you, be comfortable. You got a 6-hour plane flight going back home. We got treatments early Sunday morning when we get back. And I just remember being in so much pain that, the doctors, they would give you a small envelope full of pills to get you through until you see the doctors the next morning. And I just remember laying down, and I had never had a beer in my life. I had never known what it was like to be drunk or be high or anything like that. I grew up you know, kind of running with a rough crowd in California, but I was always the designated driver. I was always the Mormon kid that was clean and sober and went on a mission. And here I was married in the LDS temple. I was a returned missionary. I was doing firesides with kids. And I remember being in so much pain that, you know, I just took a lot more pills than I should have, and laid down to try and rest and try and have the pain go away. And I remember the feeling at 24 years old, never even having had a beer in my life, all of a sudden I took all these pills and the pain just went away instantaneously. But then, you know, not knowing that my father had been an alcoholic, his father had passed away from alcoholism, my grandfather on the other side was an alcoholic, and, you know, I didn't realize at the time, but I was 24 and predisposed to, you know, really gravitating towards this feeling of being high. And the physical pain went away, which was amazing. But I think more than anything, I remember a lot of other, I don't know, things in my life feeling better. You know, your worries and your stresses, and, you know, the stress of being a college athlete and trying to keep up your grades at BYU. I mean, all of those things just went away, and I just felt better. And I was just like, man, what have I been running from my whole life? Like, trying to stay clear of drinking and drugs and alcohol and those things. And I just thought, man, this is amazing. And because I was going to be in pain for the next 15 weeks, you know, the doctors kept trying to help me make it through class and make it to practice and stay on the field. So they were giving me whatever drugs I needed. And not being prepared to sort of deal with that, and not ever having dealt with it in my life before that, all of a sudden here I am, you know, 24, almost 25, got a young Mormon family I'm trying to raise, trying to make it to the NFL, and realize, holy crap, Derik, you're addicted to these things. And it was scary because I wasn't about to lose my starting position. I'd worked too damn hard for 20 years to get to be where I was a starting linebacker at BYU, but all of a sudden, you know, I want to go and get some help because I realized I needed help, but I was like, I can't get help because I'm going to get kicked out of school for breaking the honor code again. And so I just thought, man, Derik, you can beat this. You can beat this. You just got to try harder, you know. But not knowing anything about addiction, not knowing anything about drugs, you know, I had this horrible secret that I dealt with for over 10 years after leaving BYU. And ended up really complicating my marriage. I had kept it a secret from my wife, my 4 kids, and, you know, got into a situation where the problem got so bad, and I was so ashamed and so embarrassed about it because I was still doing firesides for young people. I was still standing up pretending like, you know, I was this all-American boy who didn't have any problems and got a finance degree from BYU and was running a successful business, but I still had this problem that was a total secret to anybody. I was the only person that knew. And I was too embarrassed and too ashamed, kind of in our culture, to even come clean with it and to try and get help because I was still just too ashamed and too embarrassed. And it's one of these things that I've reached out to Kalani and even the University of Utah to try and help some of these young kids that maybe come from our culture, where there's a lot of shame associated with making mistakes like that in life. So
yeah, I think it's exasperated coming from BYU, where if you did go to your ecclesiastical leader about it, you could, like you said, get kicked out of school.
Yeah,
because you actually had one run in, and we'll get back into that, where you actually had a kind of like you kind of saved your buddy's life, but it kind of ended up getting you in some trouble as well.
Yeah.
But I want to stick to this story we'll back into that. But so how did you finally get help or get through the shame of, you know, the situation where you were able to get out of it?
Yeah, my wife came to me after I was finally fully open and honest with her, and she said, I want a divorce. You know, our marriage has been a lie, it's been a sham, you've been living a double life for all these years, and I don't feel like I can trust you. And she filed for divorce and wanted to have full custody of our kids, and things got really bad for a little while to where I finally just hit my rock bottom. And ended up going to a church-sponsored Narcotics Anonymous class and bumped into Alum Harrington there. And Alum Harrington had a similar issue after leaving BYU and struggled with addiction for years and years, and he became my sponsor and helped me finally get my life back on track and put the pieces back together after having to go through a lot of pain and putting a lot of people through a lot of heartache and a lot of pain for a lot of years. But once I was able to finally be honest, you know, with my ecclesiastic leaders and with my doctors and with my family and with my kids and with all of my friends, you know, that honesty is the first step to getting back to where you need to be. But I just felt it so hard to be honest for so long because just the culture I grew up in.
Yeah. So somebody listening to this right now, because I think that's one of the things I'm really big on. People that listen to my podcast a lot know that I'm really trying to help people. Anything you bring out of darkness, you can get rid of the shame, right? Brené Brown talks about this a lot, Braving the Wilderness in her book and some different things like that. But I think it's so important to be able to talk about things that you think you're the only one going through an issue. You think you're the only one that has, you know, this thing that you beat yourself up about or your dark secret or whatever. When you kind of understand, what I've kind of learned in my life is anytime I get vulnerable with things that I struggle with, it always seems to go in my favor. It always seems to bring people closer to me. And you think they're going to judge you and be disappointed in you, but really they love you that much more. And I think the more that people can hear a story like yours and learn from that, I think the power of your story really is that power of being able to come out of the darkness and be able to admit, like, you know, these are some things that I deal with, and then getting the help that you need.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you asked earlier, you know, anything you're willing to share, and I'm just like, hell yeah, you know, the more I can share, you know, what I've gone through, the more power it gives me. And I've found that through social media and through some of the work that I've done, man, I've had people reach out to me, guys will reach out to me on Twitter and just be like, man, I've been struggling with this, or my spouse has been a drug addict for 10 years and, you know, we don't know where to go, how to start, who to turn to. And there's power in me, you know, having gone through what I have gone through in helping other people now.
Yeah.
At this point, it's the only way that I stay on a good path. It's the only way that I'm able to, in some way, kind of make up for a lot of the things that I've gone through and that my kids have gone through. Yeah, just it's what I love, and it's why I'm active. It's why I'm such a jerk on social media, just to get some attention, because then people will at some point realize, man, this guy's, he's not a bad guy.
Well, that's already kind of what's happened. I mean, when you first came out, BYU fans were just livid, like, this guy's saying the F word, this guy's supposed to represent the church, and they were so mad. And it kind of had this little, it took about 2 years, but you kind of saw this shift where people went, hey, no, this dude's like actually being real. This guy's, you know, actually serves a really good purpose. And I don't know, I've always thought of myself, this was one of the reasons I really like you, is because I say, if you're going to be anything, be interesting. That's one, because people care about interesting, right? Like, for me, I gravitate to people that are characters. Just entertain me, interest me a little bit. Like, you know, people are bored, people want to be entertained. And so if you can present a message in a way that actually is interesting, you're going to get an audience and people are going to listen, where you can actually affect change. And so I think that's something you've done really well. Is, you know, they say the most attractive state to be in is completely unapologetic about who you are. I think that's what makes you attractive to other people. And it's funny because Utah fans, they'll defend you more than BYU fans at this point in the game. You know, they've kind of understood, like, it's all in good fun. Like, you actually do hate Utah, but it's like a love of the same. I kind of think of myself the same way. It's like, I actually do cheer against them. I don't want them to do well, but I don't hate them. I kind of love it. You know, like, my favorite experience I've ever had in the rivalry was a couple years ago. I was with my girlfriend. She's a Utah fan, so I was the only BYU guy, and we were doing pretty good. Taysom, it was his senior year when we, you know, missed the 2-point conversion to win it, and so the game was really intense. And the fans, they started at the beginning of the game really yelling. They'll yell, you know, the Mormon things, and, you know, your garments are showing, or all those different things. And by the end of the game, like, different players from Utah kept coming up and high-fiving me and being like, "What's up, Rex? Good to see you." You know, Sean O'Connell and Wesley, you know, and some of these other guys. And it was just so funny because by the end of the game, all the fans around me were like, "What the heck? Why don't they hate this guy?"
Right.
And I don't know. It's like when you're actually, like, get to hear people's stories more and more, you realize that it is like a hate, but it's not like a hate like I want bad things to happen to you. It's just like, I'm going to cheer my team, and we're going to have so much fun with this. And at the end of it, we can do it again next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do want to get in a little bit, being rivalry week. I want to tag into your, what's your all-time favorite moments, or what was your record against Utah when you played?
So I played against them 4 years, and the 3 times that I played up at Rice Eccles, we won, and lost to them in '97. So the visiting team won all 4 of the games that I played against them. But because of my mission and my redshirt year, I had 3 games up there. So I've always loved that environment because I am undefeated up there. Always have been, with the 3 victories on the field. Plus, there's nothing better than getting in a fight with your old man against some drunk Utah.
Tell us about that story. I think it's one of the most famous stories of the rivalries. Your dad gets in a scuffle in the stands, or what happened exactly?
Yeah.
Is this a Max Hall situation? They're throwing stuff at your dad?
It was pretty funny. It's the Conachero kick off the uprights, and I was the middle blocker on that field goal block, and just barely got my fingertips on this kick and looked around and watched it clank off the uprights, and we were just jumping up and down and celebrating. It was my last game there at Rice Eccles, and we went to the WAC championship after that, but I knew that my time at BYU was really running short, and my parents, even though they didn't have a lot of money, they would save up and try and travel to all of my games. And so I ran over to the sidelines and started to climb up into those stands to go hug my parents. Just so grateful for the support they'd given me for all those years. And as I approached my father, there were a couple of Utah fans that were clearly intoxicated that had made their way down into the BYU family players section where all the BYU fans were. And one of these fans was getting in my father's face and yelling at him, telling him to go the F back to Provo. And he was just super upset that they lost the game. Anyways, I go to jump back down onto the field, and this fan just shoves me with 2 hands right in my back. You know how there's quite a drop off from the stands. There's a good 8-foot drop.
Yeah, I actually jumped off it after Johnny Harleen caught the touchdown, and I just ran through the student section, the muss, and I jumped. And I remember thinking in the air like, oh, that's a lot further than I thought.
Than it looks.
It's more. I think it's more than 8 feet, but it was like 12. I swear, it was pretty high. I had time to think.
I came down on my face on the turf, and I remember looking back up. And there were a couple of players around me, Brad Martin. And Kalani was right there, and I turned around and looked up to the guy that had shoved me, and my old man he had his coat in one hand and he had his camcorder, his VHS camcorder in the other, and he says, "Hey, that's my son," to the guy, and the guy turns to my dad and just says, "F you," and just punches my old man just right in the face. And there's probably not a worse guy he could have picked in the whole stadium to pick on. I mean, my dad's like former Navy guy, grew up in East LA, was a member of the West Side White Boys, just a motorcycle gang kid. And, he was a convert to the Mormon church, but I mean, to that day, he was still throwing down with people if he needed to down in Southern California. So my old man, before I could even get back up there, because I jumped back up and started climbing up, my old man had just rattled off probably 10 or 12 shots to this guy's face, and he's got broken nose, he's got broken jaw, blood's going everywhere. It's pretty funny too, because Kalani's family was right up there with my family, and 2 of his sisters were giving the guy the business too. So one of Kalani's sisters is one of my really good friends, and she was right there helping my old man fight. And by the time I got up there, I was pulling the guy up by his coat, and my dad was still going to town on him. I turned around, and all of the photographers from the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News and everybody were right there, and I see all these flashes going off. And the pictures look like I'm holding the guy from the back as my old man just pounds on his face. And it looked really bad. But then I see the cops coming down, and I actually got a little nervous because it's kind of a funny story, but my little brother had just got released from the Utah County Jail a couple weeks before, and he's such an idiot that he stole his prison jumpsuit, and he actually gave me the top to wear under my pads during the game. And he just thought he was being cool, he was being funny, and I did too. So I'm like, man, these cops are gonna come and they're gonna want to interview me and see what's going on. So I ran into the visiting locker room, and had to strip down real quick and try and get that orange prison jumpsuit off before the cops got into the locker room to interview me. And just got out of there just in time. And the cops came, they interviewed everybody, they took that guy and put him in jail. And my father actually had like some chest pains and stuff, but he was still a bishop in the Mormon church, and his face and my face were printed all over the sports page the next day. And he was getting calls from his state president in Southern California saying, "Man, Bishop, what the hell are you doing up there? Starting fights and and my old man to this day, he gets a lot of laughs up in Salt Lake and in Provo because people still recognize him from his picture back in the day."
What a fun little memory, man, to, like you said, be able to get in a brawl.
Get the victory and then get into a fight and come out on the winning end of both. It was fun.
That's pretty good, man. Well, one thing I remember when you were at BYU, touch base on this before we skip on to kind of what you've been doing now, but is you had some friends. You went down to Snow College, I think, to support some friends or whatever, and a fight broke out, some of the Snow football players, and you ended up getting in a lot of trouble. You had a gun on you or something. Go ahead, tell the story, because did you get kicked out of BYU for a little bit for that?
I did.
So what happened? Tell us.
Yeah,
it was a news story.
It was right after the Cotton Bowl. So I think it was January or February. I remember because it was snowing really bad down in Ephraim. But we went down to see some girls that were on the dance team down there. One of my best friends had a girlfriend down there. We went down to hang out with them, and we were just getting out of our cars and getting into this concert dance thing that was going on. And my buddy's girlfriend, super attractive girl, but she was having words with a bunch of the football players from down there. Mm-hmm. The football team, they also have a bunch of guys that hang out around them that just kind of the hangers-on.
The posse,
the posse.
Always looking for problems.
And the guys down there, it was Keith Uparesso who was the head football coach down there, and he had a lot of these guys that he recruited to come play for him down there. And there were some pretty big, rough characters. And my buddy and his girlfriend got into an argument with about 10 of them. And before I knew it, I just walked up to the event. There were fists flying and people were getting beat up. The girl was even getting harassed and beat up. And I just thought, oh man, there's only a couple of us. We got 10 or 15 guys that are getting crazy with us. And I don't know, I made a really poor decision. But man, where I'm from, I was thinking, kind of trying to think 2 steps ahead. And I was just like, man, what am I going to do to kind of save us from the situation? And I just thought, man, I got a 9mm handgun in my car. I ran and grabbed it, and I just thought, man, if I just squeeze off a couple of rounds up in the air. I mean, where I'm from in Cali, when a couple of gunshots go off, everybody just scatters.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody just takes off. And, that's kind of what I was hoping for, man. I just got to scare these guys off. And as soon as I squeezed off a couple of rounds into the air, all these guys started encircling me. And I'll never forget, one of them says to me, "MF, we hope you got enough bullets in that gun to kill all of us, because you're going to die." And I remember thinking, and I'd been on a mission and stuff. I mean, you go to jail, you commit murder. I mean, I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah, sure.
So I thought, what can I do? And I said, I'm just basically screwed. I'm not about to kill somebody. So I squeezed off, the rest of the clip into the air, and then just dropped the gun in the snow, and just thought, all right, let's go. And, fought about 10 of them. Just woke up face down in the snow, bloody. Some of the witnesses said in court later that they picked up that handgun, and sure enough, tried to put it at the back of my head and squeeze it, and no bullets left in it. Luckily, I had emptied the chamber, emptied the clip, and cops came, took everybody to the station, and some of the security down there at Snow College were friends with all the players and friends with all the posse, and they just said, man, that guy was shooting to kill. And so the district attorney down there booked me in jail for attempted murder, even though I just shot bullets in the air to try and scare everybody away, try and save my friend and his girlfriend's lives. And I just thought, man, I am going to have to call Lavelle Edwards, tell him I was booked in jail for attempted murder. And,
you're a sophomore at this time?
Yeah, sophomore, just right after the Cotton Bowl. And so Lavelle says, all right, Derik, you tell me the story from A to Z. Don't leave anything out. Be upfront and honest with me. And I told him the whole story and said, Coach, I was just scared to death. Just trying to scare everybody away and trying to save my friends' lives. And it just turned really ugly. And now it looks really, really bad. But I promise I didn't do what they said I did. And, you know, Coach came down. He bailed me out of jail.
Lavelle came down and bailed you out of jail?
He came down to Ephraim, got me out. And he said, first thing we're going to do is go up to the honor code office and tell them the whole story from A to Z. You tell them everything. And I laid it out there, told them everything, and the honor code office said, okay, you know, it was a dumb thing to do, but I think you're going to be okay. And then it was a couple days later that the media got a hold of everything. They had my mugshot up on the 6 o'clock news and charged with attempted murder. And the honor code office called me back and they said, well, we're probably going to need you to withdraw from school. If you don't want to withdraw on your own, then we're going to kick you out. You're done. And I was a little upset that...
This time they hadn't gone through the legal process.
Yeah, yeah. You know, by the end of everything, when we get all the witnesses' statements and the truth all finally comes out, you know, all the charges get dropped.
Right.
You know, I had to do some community service and work to get back into school, which took me about 6 months. But, you know, the school accepted me back in and everything was able to get cleared up. But by that time, you know, the media doesn't really care about that story.
Sure.
And the attempted murder thing was a lot sexier and all that. But, you know, and I ended up, you know, putting my life back together. But Lavelle Edwards really just stuck by my side for those 6 months and said, we're going to make this okay. And, you know, he's one of the biggest reasons that, you know, I was able to, you know, I think kind of put all the pieces of life back together and get back into school and get into the business school and get a great degree from the school and have a shot to go on and play in the NFL. So
did you ever, I mean, because you got recruited, when you were kicked out of here, you got recruited pretty heavily again by all the major schools.
Yeah.
Did you consider transferring, or because Lavelle was taking such a personal role in it, you never even considered it?
Yeah, just because of Lavelle, you know, I told everybody else that I wasn't interested in going and playing anywhere else, and I still knew that I needed BYU in my life to help me, you know, kind of take some steps forward.
Very cool. So people that don't know kind of what you're doing, obviously those are some stories that were in the media, but day-to-day, Derik Stevenson, what are you doing right now? Like, what do you do on a daily basis with your life for the audience?
Yeah, so, you know, I got my business degree at BYU. Another thing that Lavelle just really encouraged me, I went to him and I begged for his help to help me apply, because I didn't think with my grades and my background and everything that I would have a chance to compete with the BYU students in the accounting program or the finance program. And Lavelle told me, well, he asked me, have you tried to get in? And I said, well, no, I'm not going to get in. And he said, well, you go try by yourself. And then if you do need help, you come back and talk to me then. But, you know, don't pretend like you failed already, you know, and you need my help. You can do this on your own. And, you know, those are some words of wisdom from him that, you know, really inspired me to really put together my application package and, you know, writing the essays and doing all those sorts of things. You know, I was able to, without his help, go and get accepted into the Marriott School.
Very cool.
Get my degree in finance, and now, you know, I own a financial services and insurance company called Stevenson Risk Management. We insure a lot of the big real estate developers and investors and general contractors here in Utah and throughout the western U.S. And, you know, I would not have had the opportunity to do something really cool like that with my life without Lavelle and without the football program and without BYU. So I kind of do that, kind of my 8 to 5. Or maybe my 8 to 2. And then, you know, I got 4 daughters.
Yeah, and you've been able to do some really cool things with them through the program in the last couple of years.
Yeah. But, you know, I don't get any football in my life having 4 daughters. I go to a lot of ballet recitals and violin recitals and those sorts of things. But I wanted to figure out a way to still be involved with BYU, college sports. So being able to, you know, kind of take maybe what my message is and go out within the community and how passionate I am about BYU football and BYU sports in general. there's just been a lot of opportunity working with the different radio stations and TV stations around here, and now this is kind of, I got my day job, which is selling insurance, and then I do my radio stuff. I do some charity stuff as job number 3, working with Kalani's Foundation and some other ventures. But then a couple months ago I was approached by Charlie Ebersol, who's the son of Dick Ebersol, who started CBS Sunday Night Football, CBS Sports back in the day, and they formed a new professional football league. And they approached me because they kind of talked to Kalani, they talked to Kyle, and they said, who's the guy on the ground there in Utah that knows both programs, that has connections with the business community, that has connections with all the charities, that can kind of help us get entrenched here in Salt Lake City, like we're doing in 7 other cities around the country, and get this football team off the ground. So kind of job number 4 is working as a consultant for the Salt Lake Stallions, who kick off their season in February at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's a pretty cool venture that's going on out there that we're involved in. The Utah Jazz and Real Salt Lake and a lot of the big money and the big families and the big names here throughout the sporting community in Utah. We're getting them all involved because a new professional sports team in Salt Lake City.
And it's kind of like a minor league team for the NFL.
Yeah, it's a similar setup to AAA baseball like the Bees have. And they're really doing some cool, unique things that the NFL is excited to partner with them on. Kind of helping them beta test some different models and different ideas and technologies and rules and approaches that maybe the NFL can't run the risk of rolling out at their level. When it comes to cutting kickoffs, which I hate that they don't have any kickoffs in this new league, but they're trying to look at concussions. They're trying to look at ways to move away from the pharmaceutical drug issue in sports, which I'm really passionate about. Taking a more holistic approach to medicine. Looking at pain management, through marijuana and not through narcotics. Looking at some of the technology and the gaming and the gambling aspects of what the future of sports are really going to be. And we're able to roll that out at a minor league level. The NFL can kind of watch it, see how it affects concussions, see how it affects treatments, see how it can affect income or revenue based on gambling and gaming, and some of the unique approaches to what sports are going to be in the future with the younger generation and how big they are into video games and things. It's going to be really cool where you're able to watch on your iPad one of these games, and you tap on a player and it'll pull up the player's stats, it'll pull up the player's dimensions, it'll pull up their history, and then you're able to bet on individual plays or scores. And here in Utah it's going to be a little different than the other 7 markets, but you're going to be able to rack up points that can turn into trips or prizes, just getting the younger involvement, kids that are really into video games and also sports at the same time, and kind of combine the two. So it's got some really cool aspects to it that I think, plus with I think they've raised about $300 million at the league level, and we're now raising a lot of money here locally through the local community from different investors, and it's something that has kind of just been a project of mine. I'm not getting paid at this point to do anything with those guys, but
a cool opportunity to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it turns into business opportunities for me selling insurance, because I'm now helping the league with their concussion liability insurance, and I can go to Lloyd's of London and help broker a deal where they're able to offset that risk in the future and not have to pay out on big claims in the future because we have an insurance policy backing us and different things like that. So all of my worlds are kind of combining and colliding with some different unique opportunities here.
Very cool. It's cool how that's all been able to come full circle.
Yeah, and I could do some good, and there's so much. I mean, they're really focusing, and it's not just lip service on player safety. I mean, that's how they're trying to differentiate this league from things like the XFL and the USFL and the past. They're really taking some different approaches to where we can now get the NFL to actually back us and buy in, because they want to use us to kind of test out some of their new models and stuff. So
awesome. Well, last thing I got to ask you: the games this week, tomorrow. Who do you got? What's the final score? And we'll get out on your prediction seat. By the way, if you guys are going tomorrow, look for him at the tailgate. Yep. Go make some money for charity. But what do you see happening in the game tomorrow?
Man, BYU's going to blow them out. I got no concerns. None at all.
I love it. I got BYU by 4. How's that? We'll both go on the record. All right, man. This was fun. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
If you're not following him on Twitter, give us your Twitter handle real quick.
Yeah, just my full name, Derik Stevenson. Same on Instagram, same on Facebook. So, yeah, just Derik Stevenson as my Twitter handle.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.